The night on planet Alaris was silent and cold. Silver clouds drifted across the twin moons, and the crystal towers of the royal palace shimmered under their pale light. Inside, the great halls echoed with laughter and music. It was the night of the bonding festival, a celebration where warriors and nobles chose their life partners. Every heart was filled with joy, every face with excitement. Every face except one. Far above the grand hall, in a high balcony surrounded by shimmering glass walls, sat Princess Lyra. Her eyes were like frozen starlight, bright, but filled with quiet pain. The lower half of her body was made of shining silver metal, a cruel reminder of the explosion that had nearly taken her life years ago. The accident had left her broken, scarred, and unwanted. Her people whispered behind her back, calling her the broken one. They said no one could bond with someone who wasn't whole. Lyra had stopped fighting those words long ago. She only watched the stars now, silent, distant, unreachable. Down below, the sounds of the festival rose higher. Music played, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the air. Through her window, she could see the young warriors dancing with their chosen partners, eyes glowing with pride. Her heart ached softly. Once she had dreamed of dancing like that, of someone holding her not out of duty but because they wanted to. But that dream had died the day her body was rebuilt in metal and sorrow. She turned her face away from the window and sighed. The glow of the celebration reflected on the walls, painting her silver skin in gold light. Somewhere deep in her heart she wished just once someone would look at her without pity. Then the great palace doors opened. The music stopped. The crowd fell silent. Lyra's head turned slightly curious. The Queen's voice echoed through the hall below. "Tonight we welcome a guest from Earth, Commander Ethan Cross, a human." Lyra frowned. It had been years since a human was invited to Alaris. The alliance between their worlds was fragile, born out of war and uneasy peace. Humans were seen as strange, weaker, and too emotional. But as the tall figure stepped into the light, even Lyra leaned forward without meaning to. Ethan Cross was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He wore a black uniform trimmed with silver, his posture calm yet strong. His eyes, deep blue and steady, scanned the crowd, then lifted toward the balcony where Lyra sat. Their eyes met. In that instant, something inside her shifted. It wasn't just a look. It felt like he saw through her, past the metal, past the scars, into the soul she had long hidden. For a heartbeat, she forgot to breathe. The courtiers began whispering, curious and cautious. Some sneered quietly, others stared with cold interest. But Ethan didn't look away. His gaze held warmth, not pity, not shock, but quiet understanding. Lyra's hands trembled slightly. No one had ever looked at her like that. The Queen spoke again, introducing the guest formally, but Lyra barely heard the words. She only felt the strange, soft pull of something she couldn't name, a connection, a spark that shouldn't have been possible. Later that night, as the celebration continued, Lyra remained on her balcony, still thinking about that look. The sky was clear now, and the stars burned brighter than before. She touched the cold glass and whispered to herself, "Why does he look at me like I'm not broken?" In the great hall below, Ethan glanced up again from where he stood among the alien nobles. He saw her silhouette framed against the glowing crystal wall. Even from afar he could sense her loneliness, the kind that no crown or title could hide. He didn't know her story, but something deep in his heart told him that she wasn't someone to be pitied. She was someone who had survived. He wanted to know more. Lyra turned away from the window, trying to push the thought away. But her mind kept returning to those eyes, calm, human, and strangely gentle. For the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her chest. Hope. It was dangerous, foolish even, but it warmed her like sunlight touching ice. Below, the music started again. The dancers returned to the floor, and laughter echoed through the palace once more. Yet for Lyra, the world had changed in a single glance. The loneliness she had carried for so long didn't feel quite as heavy. That night, as she sat in silence, a soft breeze entered through the open window, brushing against her silver skin. Somewhere deep within the palace, Ethan walked the corridors, unaware that the eyes of the alien princess still followed him. Curious, cautious but alive again. The stars outside shimmered, as if watching them both. And though neither of them knew it yet, that single meeting would change the fate of two worlds forever. Lyra whispered one last time before closing her eyes, her voice barely a breath in the cold night air. Maybe. I'm not broken after all. The morning light crept through the tall crystal windows of the palace, painting the walls in soft shades of gold and blue. The bonding festival had ended hours ago, but whispers still floated through every corridor. Everyone was talking about the same thing: the human. Commander Ethan Cross had arrived from Earth as a representative of peace, yet his calm confidence and piercing eyes had left a deeper mark than anyone expected. Some nobles admired his bravery for walking among alien royalty. Others mocked him quietly, calling him weak and strange. But the one who couldn't forget him was Princess Lyra. She sat at her mirror that morning, her fingers tracing the cold metal that replaced part of her arm. Her reflection stared back, part human, part machine. The faint lines where silver met skin always reminded her of what she'd lost. But last night, for the first time in years, she hadn't felt ugly. His eyes had made her forget her scars. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. Her attendant, Mira, entered quietly. "Your Highness, the Queen has called for you. The human guest will be presented to the court today." Lyra froze. "To the court?" "Yes," Mira said softly. "He's to discuss the trade pact between Earth and Alaris, but—" She hesitated. "Everyone knows he looked at you last night. People are already talking." Lyra's chest tightened. The court was cruel, always searching for weakness. She didn't want Ethan dragged into their cold gossip. Still, something inside her whispered. She wanted to see him again. Moments later, the grand hall filled with nobles and warriors dressed in gold and black. The queen sat upon her high throne, her expression calm but unreadable. Beside her stood Lyra, her posture perfect though her heart pounded beneath her jeweled collar. Then the doors opened. Ethan Cross entered, head held high, his dark uniform gleaming in the morning light. Every step he took echoed through the silent hall. The aliens watched with curiosity, their glowing eyes fixed on the outsider. When he finally looked up at the throne, his gaze brushed past the queen and landed on Lyra. A brief smile touched his lips, small, respectful, but real. Lyra felt the faintest heat rise to her cheeks. She quickly looked away, pretending to study the floor, but her heart betrayed her calm face. The queen spoke. "Commander Cross, we welcome you. I trust your journey from Earth was not difficult?" Ethan bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, it was an honor. Your world is far more beautiful than I imagined." "Beautiful," the queen repeated softly, "and dangerous." Her words hung in the air like frost. "Tell us, human, what does your kind truly seek from Alaris?" Ethan met her gaze without fear. "Not power," he said. "Only peace. We've both lost too much to war." A murmur passed through the court. His voice was steady, his tone respectful, but his words carried weight. Lyra studied him quietly, admiring the calm strength in his face. Unlike the warriors of Alaris, he didn't rely on glowing armor or weapons, only honesty. The queen asked more questions, about Earth's cities, its people, its technology, and Ethan answered each with quiet intelligence. But Lyra noticed something no one else did. Every time he finished speaking, his eyes flickered toward her, as if he needed to make sure she was still watching. After the session, as the crowd began to disperse, Lyra turned to leave the hall. She wanted to escape before anyone saw the emotion she couldn't hide. But as she reached the corridor, a familiar voice stopped her. "Your Highness," she turned. Ethan stood there a respectful distance away, his blue eyes gentle but curious. "You shouldn't speak to me here," she said quietly. "They'll think you want something." "Maybe I do," he said with a faint smile. "Just a conversation." Lyra hesitated, then gestured for him to follow her to the garden, a place of quiet fountains and silver trees that shimmered in the light. No guards came here. No one dared disturb her solitude. For a while, neither spoke. The sound of falling water filled the air. Then Ethan broke the silence. "They talk about you," he said softly. "They call you the Broken Princess." Lyra's breath caught. "And do you believe them?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I've seen broken things before. They don't shine the way you do." She turned to him, surprised. His words were simple, but something in his tone made her chest ache. No flattery, no pity, just truth. "You don't know me," she whispered. "Maybe not," he said. "But I want to." Lyra looked away, fighting the small, unwanted smile pulling at her lips. "You shouldn't say such things. Humans and our kind, we don't bond. It's forbidden." "Sometimes," Ethan said quietly, stepping closer. The heart doesn't ask for permission. Their eyes met again, the same connection from last night burning brighter now. For a moment, the world around them fell away. She forgot her scars, her crown, her metal limbs. She was just Lyra and he was just Ethan, two souls who shouldn't have met yet somehow had. Then a voice echoed from the distance, a guard calling her name. Lyra stepped back quickly, her face returning to calm. "You should go," she said softly. Ethan nodded, though his gaze lingered. "Then until next time, Princess." As he turned to leave, Lyra's heart raced in confusion and warmth. She touched her chest and whispered to herself, "Why does his voice make me feel alive again?" Above them, the twin moons of Alaris shone brighter as if watching closely, and somewhere deep in the palace shadows, jealous eyes were already planning to make sure the human never got too close to their broken princess. The next morning dawned bright over the silver spires of Alaris, but the warmth of the twin suns did little to calm the storm growing inside the royal palace. Whispers filled the marble corridors, quiet, poisonous whispers that spread like fire. The human spoke with her alone. "In the royal garden, can you believe it?" She smiled. At him, every word carried judgment. Every voice was sharp with disbelief or envy. And though Lyra tried to ignore them, she could feel their eyes watching her every step. She sat in the training hall balcony, pretending to observe the warriors below as they sparred. But her mind was elsewhere. Her heart still carried the echo of Ethan's words. "I've seen broken things before. They don't shine the way you do." No one had ever said something like that to her. Not with that kind of honesty. Not with that kind of care. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the look in his eyes, calm, fearless, human. A small smile formed before she could stop it. But her peace didn't last long. "Your Highness," came a sharp, cold voice. Lyra turned to see General Kyle, one of the Queen's most trusted warriors. His armor gleamed gold, his expression proud and unkind. He bowed only slightly. "The Queen requests your presence in the council chamber. Immediately." Lyra stood, her calm mask slipping into place. "Of course." When she entered the council room, she found her mother, the Queen, seated at the head of the table, surrounded by the high ministers and commanders. Ethan was there too, standing on the opposite side, his expression composed but tense. "Princess Lyra," the Queen began, her voice cool as glass, "it seems you and Commander Cross have grown familiar." The silence in the room was heavy. Lyra lowered her gaze. "We only spoke, Mother. Nothing more, nothing more." General Kell's tone dripped with sarcasm. "You spoke privately without escort, and now the entire court whispers about your curiosity for this human." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, his hands behind his back. Lyra met the general's gaze. "My curiosity is my own. He's a guest, and I treated him as such. That is all." But Kale only smirked. "Perhaps the human thinks kindness means more here than it does on Earth." The insult hung in the air. Lyra's temper flared, but before she could speak, Ethan stepped forward. "With respect, General," he said calmly, "where I come from, kindness is not weakness." Kyle's smirk vanished. "You speak boldly for a guest, and you insult easily for a warrior," Ethan replied, his voice steady, not rising. But the quiet confidence in it made the room go still. Lyra's heart skipped. The human wasn't backing down, not even against one of Alaris's most feared commanders. The Queen raised a hand. "Enough." Her gaze swept across the room. "Commander Cross, you are here as an ally. But remember, our customs are not yours. Princess Lyra's place is within her people." Ethan bowed slightly. "Understood, Your Majesty." The Queen turned to her daughter. "And you, remember who you are, Lyra. The court is watching." Lyra nodded, but her eyes flickered toward Ethan as she left. His calm blue gaze followed her until the doors closed behind her. Outside, in the empty hallway, she leaned against the wall and exhaled. Her pulse was racing. She knew her mother's warning wasn't just about politics. It was a reminder of the invisible cage she lived in. The bond between her and Ethan was not only forbidden, it was dangerous. But as the hours passed, she found herself walking again toward the garden, her feet moving on their own. The air was quiet there, filled with the soft hum of silver leaves, and as if drawn by the same invisible force, Ethan appeared from the opposite side of the path. "You're brave," Lyra said softly. Talking back to Kale like that. Ethan gave a faint smile. I've faced worse than angry generals. You shouldn't have, she said. They'll use it against you. I don't care, he replied. I won't let anyone speak about you that way. Lyra's breath caught. She looked away, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. You don't understand. I'm not like others here. I'm damaged. Damaged? Ethan stepped closer, his voice gentle. No, you're alive. And that means you still have something stronger than anyone in that hall. Hope. She stared at him, the words sinking deep into her chest. For a long moment, neither moved. The garden lights shimmered across her metal arm, reflecting softly in his eyes. Then, somewhere nearby, a low clang echoed. A sound of armor. Lyra's eyes widened. Guards, she whispered. You can't be seen here again. Ethan nodded, stepping back, his gaze never leaving hers. Then promise me something, he said quietly. What? Don't let them make you believe you're broken. She wanted to speak, but her voice failed her. So she only nodded. As he disappeared into the shadows, Lyra stood alone, her heart racing. The stars above seemed brighter than before, as if the universe itself had heard their words. But in another corner of the garden, hidden among the silver trees, General Kale watched them go, his eyes burning with anger. His hand tightened on the hilt of his blade. The human doesn't belong here, he muttered, and soon he'll learn why. The night wind whispered through the leaves, carrying a silent warning. Their story was no longer just a secret connection. It was becoming a danger neither of them could escape. The night on Alaris was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant hum of the palace lights. The celebration days were over, but tension lingered like an unseen storm. Rumors about the human and the princess had spread beyond the palace walls. Every noble had their version of the story, and none of them were kind. Princess Lyra sat by the edge of the royal garden's fountain, her reflection rippling in the glowing water. The silver in her arm shimmered faintly under the moonlight. The whispers of the court still echoed in her mind. She lets a human near her. No alien warrior will ever claim her now. She tried to ignore them, but each word cut deep. Her heart felt heavier than the metal she carried. The only thing that made her breathe easier was the memory of Ethan's voice. Calm, warm, and so painfully human. Don't let them make you believe you're broken. A small sound came from behind her. She turned sharply. A shadow moved between the silver trees, tall, familiar. Then he stepped into the light. Commander Cross, she whispered, her tone caught between surprise and relief. You shouldn't be here. Ethan smiled faintly. Then it's a good thing I'm not good at following orders. Lyra stood, glancing around nervously. If anyone sees you, they won't, he interrupted softly. I just needed to see you. There was something in his voice, quiet urgency mixed with concern. Lyra's heart raced. Why? He stepped closer, his eyes steady on hers. Because I heard what they're saying about you, about us. And I don't care. Lyra lowered her gaze, her voice trembling slightly. You should. They'll destroy you, Ethan. They don't trust humans. To them, you're an outsider, and me. She looked at her arm. I'm a reminder of everything they wish to forget. He shook his head slowly. You're more than they'll ever understand. When I look at you, I don't see broken metal or scars. I see someone who survived what others couldn't. Her breath caught. His words sank deep, touching the part of her heart that had long been locked away. She turned away quickly, afraid of what her eyes might show. You say that as if you know my pain. I don't, he said softly. But I know what it's like to feel alone in a crowd. They stood there in silence. The garden lights flickered like tiny stars, casting soft shadows across their faces. Lyra's pulse quickened. She could feel the warmth of him even though he hadn't touched her. Ethan, she whispered, if you keep coming here, they'll call you a traitor. Let them, he said, his tone low but firm. You're worth it. Her heart thudded painfully. No one had ever said something like that to her, not even her mother. For years she had been treated like a symbol, not a person. But when he looked at her, she felt seen, truly seen. Then, from somewhere beyond the garden wall, a faint, metallic echo sounded. Lyra stiffened. Did you hear that? Ethan nodded, turning toward the sound. We're not alone. From the shadows, 3 armored figures stepped forward. Royal guards, led by General Kale. His face was cold, eyes sharp with anger. So, Kale said slowly, his voice dripping with venom, the rumors were true. The broken princess sneaks out to meet her human pet. Lyra's blood ran cold. Kale, stop this. But Ethan stepped forward, his tone firm. Watch your words, General, Kyle smirked. Or what, will you fight me, human? This is not your world, Ethan's eyes hardened. Maybe not. But respect doesn't belong to just one world. The tension between them crackled like fire. The guards shifted uneasily, uncertain whether to interfere. Lyra moved between them, her voice sharp. Enough, both of you, Kale sneered. You shame your crown, princess. Do you think your mother will protect you when she learns of this? Lyra's hands clenched. Leave him alone, Kale, this isn't your concern. But Kale only laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. Everything you do is my concern. You're part of this empire. And this human, he spat the word like poison, doesn't belong. He raised his hand, signaling the guards. Take him. Before Lyra could react, the guards moved forward. Ethan stepped in front of her, eyes blazing. Don't, he warned. One of the guards lunged. Ethan moved fast, grabbing the alien's arm and twisting it with a strength that startled everyone. Another guard swung and Ethan ducked, striking him in the chest. For a moment, chaos filled the garden. Lyra stood frozen, torn between fear and awe. The human was holding his ground against trained alien soldiers, and he was doing it for her. Kale snarled, drawing his weapon, but Lyra shouted, Stop, all of you! Her voice rang with power, laced with something ancient, something royal. The guards halted instantly. Even Kale hesitated. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, her metal arm shimmering. If you hurt him, she said, her voice cold as ice, I will make sure the queen knows who started this. Kyle's glare burned with fury, but he lowered his weapon. This isn't over, princess. The queen will hear of your little secret. He turned sharply, leading the guards away. Their armor clanked against the stones, echoing long after they were gone. Lyra exhaled shakily, turning to Ethan. He was breathing hard, blood on his lip but defiance still in his eyes. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You're welcome. Despite everything, the danger, the fear, Lyra couldn't help it. A small, helpless laugh escaped her lips. You're impossible. Maybe, he said softly, but I'm not leaving you to face them alone. Their eyes met again, the tension between them turning softer, warmer. Lyra felt her chest tighten as she realized she wasn't afraid anymore. As they stood beneath the glowing trees, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. The garden shimmered in gold. For a brief, fragile moment, it felt like the world had stopped, as if the stars themselves were watching two souls who were never meant to meet, but somehow had. Neither of them noticed the faint shimmer in the air above, a tiny recording drone hidden among the branches, capturing every word, every look. By morning, the entire palace would know the truth. The broken princess had fallen for a human. The sun rose slowly over Alaris, its twin rays turning the sky gold and violet. But inside the crystal palace, the air was heavy, thick with tension, silence, and unspoken judgment. Word had spread. By now, every noble, every servant, every warrior knew the forbidden truth. The broken princess had been seen in the garden with the human soldier. The whispers were cruel. Shame of the royal blood. She defies her own kind for a man from another world. She's not fit to rule. Lyra could feel their eyes on her wherever she went. The same people who once pitied her now stared with disgust or envy. She walked the long corridors with her chin held high, but her heart trembled beneath the surface. When she entered the throne chamber, the queen was already waiting, standing, not sitting, her golden cloak draped across her shoulders like a flame. The guards closed the doors behind Lyra, sealing the room in stillness. Mother, Lyra began softly, you sent for me? The queen turned slowly, her eyes cold but not cruel, more like steel tempered by sadness. You were seen last night. With the human, Lyra didn't deny it. Yes, the queen's jaw tightened. Do you have any idea what you've done? The council is in chaos. They demand his removal. Some even call for his execution. Lyra's stomach twisted. Execution for what? For speaking to me. For touching you, the queen said sharply. For defending you. For defying Kale. For breaking 1,000 years of tradition. Lyra's voice cracked. Tradition? She took a step forward. Mother, our traditions have chained us for centuries. We worship strength and hide our pain. Is that what you call pride? The queen's expression flickered, just for a heartbeat. before she turned away. You don't understand what it means to rule. A single bond between you and a human could destroy everything we've built. Lyra's tone softened. I never asked for the throne. I only wanted someone to see me, not as a symbol, not as a broken thing. Just me. There was silence. Then the Queen's voice lowered. You will end this today. The human leaves Alaris by nightfall. Lyra's chest went cold. You can't. I can, her mother said firmly. And I must. Tears burned behind Lyra's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You taught me that love is strength, that our hearts guide us more than laws ever could. The Queen turned sharply. Love is also weakness when it blinds you. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them felt heavier than any words could fill. Finally, Lyra bowed her head slightly. Then I will do what I must. She turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing softly in the golden hall. But the look in her eyes had changed. Calm on the surface, storm beneath. That evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan stood in the courtyard surrounded by guards. His bag was packed, his uniform marked with dust and small cuts from the fight. He wasn't surprised. He'd known something like this would happen. Still, when he saw Lyra approaching, the pain in his chest deepened. Princess, he said quietly. So it's true. She stopped a few feet away, struggling to hold his gaze. The Queen has ordered you to leave. Ethan nodded slowly. I expected that. She wanted to say something more and to tell him how wrong this was, how much his presence had changed her life. But her throat refused to cooperate. Her voice came out as a whisper. I tried to protect you. You did, he said gently. And I'd do it all again. Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't hide. You shouldn't have come back to me that night. You should have stayed away. Ethan smiled faintly. If I'd stayed away, you'd still be alone in that tower believing you're broken. I'd rather be banished than leave you believing that lie. The words shattered something inside her. She reached out, not thinking, just feeling, and her hand brushed his. Cold metal met warm skin. For the briefest moment, the world disappeared. Ethan, she whispered, they'll watch us. They'll hunt you if you stay. Then let them, he said softly. I didn't come here to hide. Lyra shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. You'll die if you defy them. He stepped closer, his hand gently lifting her chin. Some things are worth dying for. Before she could answer, the air around them shimmered, a signal alarm. Guards moved closer, waiting for the command to separate them. Ethan's eyes stayed locked on hers. Say it, he murmured. Say you don't feel it and I'll go. Lyra opened her mouth, but no words came. The truth was burning in her chest. She closed her eyes and whispered instead, I can't. That was all he needed to hear. He smiled, not out of victory, but peace. Then the guard stepped between them, forcing him back. As they dragged him toward the waiting ship, Lyra turned away, her heart breaking silently. She knew what the Queen had said was right. Their worlds weren't meant to mix. But she also knew something even deeper. The human had already changed her forever. That night she stood on her balcony, watching the ship rise into the dark sky. The stars reflected in her eyes like silver tears. He deserves to live, she whispered. But I deserve to love. Behind her, the door opened. Mira, her attendant, entered quietly. Your Highness, she said nervously. General Kale has been given command of the human's escort. Lyra froze. Kyle? Mira nodded. Yes, and he left with his men an hour ago. But no ship has returned. The words hit Lyra like a blade. She turned toward the stars, her pulse quickening. Ethan, she breathed, her voice shaking. What have they done? And for the first time in years, fire burned behind her calm silver eyes. The broken princess was gone. What stood in her place was something far more dangerous. A woman ready to fight for the one who saw her as whole. The night sky of Alaris was darker than usual. No starlight. No moonglow, only the faint hum of the royal towers. Lyra stood at her balcony, her metal fingers gripping the crystal railing tight enough to leave marks. The Queen's words echoed in her mind, but so did Ethan's. Some things are worth dying for. Her heart thudded painfully. Kale had been given command of the human's escort, but hours had passed and no ship had returned. That silence told her everything. Something was wrong. She turned sharply. Mira! Her attendant entered at once, pale and trembling. Yes, Your Highness? Where was Kale last seen? Mira hesitated. At the outer gate near the Storm Valley. But the guards say no transmission came after departure. The Queen has ordered silence. No one is to speak of it. Lyra's eyes hardened. Then I'll make them speak. She moved quickly, her steps echoing down the marble halls. Every servant she passed lowered their eyes, pretending not to see her fury. When she reached the command chamber, the guards blocked her way. Princess, the Queen forbids entry. Lyra's voice cut like glass. Move. They hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the room buzzed with quiet panic. Commanders whispering over holographic maps, transmission screens flickering with static. At the center stood the Queen, calm but tense, surrounded by advisors. Mother, Lyra said, her voice cold. Where is the human? The Queen didn't look at her. That is not your concern. Lyra stepped forward. It is exactly my concern. Kale was sent to escort him. No ship returned. You know what that means? The Queen turned sharply now, eyes blazing. Enough! You will not question my orders in front of the council. Lyra's anger flared. Then answer me in private. Because if Kale has harmed him, I will make this entire palace remember what I am capable of. The chamber fell silent. Even the advisors froze. The Queen stared at her daughter for a long, tense moment. Then, with a wave of her hand, she dismissed everyone. The doors closed, her voice softened. Lyra, you are letting emotion blind you. Lyra's tone broke, but her words didn't. You call it emotion. I call it truth. He saved me when no one else dared. And now you allow Kale, the man who tried to kill him, to lead his escort? The Queen's jaw tightened. Kyle acts under my command. If he crossed the line, he will answer for it. But you will stay out of this. Lyra shook her head slowly. You don't understand. I can't stay out of this, the Queen sighed. You would risk everything for a man who isn't even of our kind. Lyra's voice was steady now. He's more my kind than anyone in this palace. Before her mother could respond, the door burst open. A young soldier stumbled in, bleeding from the shoulder, gasping for air. Your Majesty, the human escaped. Kale's ship was destroyed. The room exploded in noise. The Queen demanded answers, but Lyra's heart stopped at the word escaped. Where? She demanded. Where is he? The soldier coughed, barely able to speak. He fled, into the dead zone. Near the old ruins, Lyra's eyes widened. The dead zone was forbidden, a wasteland of old weapons and radiation storms. No one survived there for long. Without hesitation, she turned and ran. The Queen shouted her name, but Lyra didn't stop. Through the corridors, past the guards, down to the lower hangar, her mechanical leg clicked softly on the metal floor as she moved faster than she ever had. She grabbed a flight suit, sealed it, and entered a scout ship. Princess, you can't go alone. A guard called out. Lyra's voice echoed from the cockpit. Then don't follow me. The ship roared to life, lifting into the dark sky. As the palace lights shrank behind her, Lyra stared into the storm clouds ahead, glowing with green lightning. Somewhere beyond that chaos, Ethan was alive. Or dying. She whispered into the silence, Hold on. I'm coming. The flight was rough. The winds tore at the small vessel. Lightning cracked across the shield. But Lyra's hands were steady on the controls. Her eyes scanned the radar. Faint energy readings flickered ahead, too irregular to be natural. Then she saw it. A wrecked transport ship half buried in black sand, smoke rising from its hull. Lyra landed nearby and stepped out into the wasteland. The air was thick, glowing faintly blue with radiation. Her armor hummed to filter the toxins. Ethan, she called, her voice echoing into the emptiness. Ethan, answer me! A low groan came from behind the wreckage. She ran toward the sound, and there he was. Ethan lay against a broken wing, bruised, blood on his forehead, one arm twisted around a damaged weapon. Her breath caught. No. She dropped to her knees beside him, gently touching his face. His eyes fluttered open. Lyra? He whispered weakly. You shouldn't be here. She smiled through tears. You always say that, and yet I'm always where you are. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. Kale, he tried to... I know, she said softly. Don't speak. But before she could move him, her scanner beeped sharply. Multiple heat signatures approaching. She turned. Shadows appeared through the mist, Kale's soldiers. They'd tracked the crash. Ethan grabbed her arm weakly. Go. They'll kill you. Lyra stood, her eyes burning silver in the dark. Let them try. The soldiers surrounded them, weapons raised. Kale stepped forward, his armor cracked but his smirk unbroken. I told the Queen I'd finish what you started, Lyra. The human doesn't belong here. Lyra moved in front of Ethan, her voice steady and cold. Neither do monsters like you. Kyle's grin faded. You'd fight your own kind? I'd fight anyone, she said, her metal hand glowing with energy. Who touches what's mine? Lightning flashed behind her as she raised her arm, power surging through her veins. Half machine, half rage, all heart. Kale sneered. Then let's see if the broken princess can still bleed. And with that, the storm erupted around them. The storm over the dead zone raged with fury, lightning tearing through the green-black clouds as wind screamed across the wasteland. Lyra stood her ground, her body glowing faintly with blue light as energy pulsed through the metal half of her frame. The sand swirled around her boots, her eyes fixed on Kale and his soldiers. Ethan tried to rise behind her, pain twisting across his face. Lyra, don't, he whispered. They'll kill you. She didn't look back. Not today. Kale's smirk widened as he drew his blade, a long curved weapon forged from alien steel, humming with red light. You always thought your mother's mercy would protect you, but here there are no witnesses. No counsel, just the truth. Lyra tilted her head slightly. Then you'll finally see it. The first soldier lunged, his plasma rifle crackling. Lyra's arm shot up. The metal plating split open, releasing a burst of pure energy that threw him backward like a rag doll. The sand scorched where he fell. Two more charged from the side, firing stun rounds. Lyra spun, her mechanical leg slamming into the ground, sending out a shockwave that shattered the rocks beneath them. Kale's smirk faded. He hadn't expected her to fight like this. Not with such control. Such power. You've upgraded, he growled. Lyra's voice was calm, almost cold. No, I stopped holding back. He charged, blade clashing with her arm as sparks exploded between them. The force sent both sliding back through the sand. Kale struck again, his blade grazing her shoulder, but instead of blood, light spilled out, sealing the wound instantly. Ethan tried to crawl closer, his vision spinning. Lyra, behind you! A soldier aimed a plasma bolt at her back, but before he could fire, Ethan raised his damaged rifle and shot him down. The recoil almost knocked him out, but he smiled weakly. Still got it. Lyra turned, eyes blazing silver. You shouldn't have done that. He grinned faintly. You're welcome. Kyle roared in fury and lunged again. This time Lyra met him head-on, their weapons locking in a burst of light and sound. The storm above them grew wilder, lightning striking the ground all around. The air itself felt alive. You think this human loves you? Kale shouted. You think he sees you as anything more than a machine? Lyra's eyes flickered with emotion. He saw me before anyone else did. Her metal hand flared with white energy. She grabbed Kale's blade mid-swing, melted it in her grip, and drove her fist into his chest. The impact sent him crashing into the sand, armor cracked, his breath gone. He gasped, You can't rule broken. Lyra's voice was low, trembling with anger and truth. Maybe not. But I can choose who I am. Kale tried to rise, but Ethan's voice cut through the storm. Don't. The commander raised his weapon again, the light reflecting off his bruised face. For a moment, Kale saw the same fire in the human's eyes that burned in Lyra's. Courage, love, defiance. Kale spat blood, falling back. This isn't over. Lyra stepped closer. You're right. She turned her arm toward the sky, firing a flare into the air. The signal exploded into a burst of blue light, the royal distress code. But next time, you'll face the queen. The soldiers, terrified and broken, dropped their weapons. The battle was over. Lyra rushed back to Ethan, kneeling beside him. You stubborn fool, she whispered, tears mixing with dust. You risked your life again, he smiled weakly. You keep needing saving. She brushed his hair from his face gently. And you keep doing it. Even when I tell you not to. His hand reached up, touching her metal cheek. It's because you're worth it. Something in her chest broke, not with pain, but release. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, the storm softening around them. I thought love made me weak, she whispered. But with you, I've never felt stronger. Ethan smiled faintly. Guess we're both broken, huh? She laughed softly through tears. Maybe, but together, we're whole. The flare light glowed above them, guiding royal ships through the dark clouds. As the rescue team descended, Lyra looked back toward Kyle's fallen body. But he was gone. Only his broken armor remained. Mira's voice echoed through the communicator. Princess Lyra, are you safe? Lyra took Ethan's hand as the ship's lights bathed them both in silver glow. For now, she replied quietly. But the war has just begun. As they rose into the storm, Ethan looked at her with half a smile. You really think your mother will forgive us for this? Lyra gazed at the burning horizon where lightning met the stars. No, she said softly. But she'll learn what love can do. The ship vanished into the clouds, leaving behind the ruins of Kyle's army and the faint echo of thunder, a warning that Alaris would never be the same again. The royal palace of Alaris had never felt this quiet. The air itself seemed to tremble as the queen stood before the Grand Council, a sea of alien nobles, their jeweled robes glowing faintly under the crystal lights. Every face was tense, every eye turned toward the massive golden doors that led into the chamber. The queen's voice was calm, but her hands were clasped tightly behind her back. Bring them in. The doors opened. Lyra entered first, her head high, her half-metal arm gleaming in the pale light. Behind her walked Ethan, his uniform torn, his face bruised, but his stride steady. The moment they appeared, the whispers began to spread like fire. The broken princess returns, and with the humans still alive. This will destroy the alliance. Lyra ignored them. She stopped at the center of the hall and bowed slightly. Mother. The queen's eyes met hers, unreadable. You defied my command. Yes, Lyra said softly. Because your command was wrong. Gasps rippled through the council chamber. No one had ever spoken to the queen like that. Ethan stood silently beside her, his gaze sharp but respectful. The queen took a step forward. You endangered your own people for an outsider. You brought shame to your bloodline. Lyra's voice trembled, not from fear but from restrained emotion. He's not an outsider. He's the reason I'm still alive. When everyone saw me as broken, he saw something else. The queen's expression softened for a fraction of a second, but she hid it quickly. Love is not an excuse for rebellion. Lyra looked up at her eyes shining. No, but it is the reason we fight, isn't it? To protect what we love. The hall fell silent again. Even the guards looked uncertain now. One of the council elders rose. Your Majesty, if we allow this, it sets a dangerous precedent. The princess has bonded with a human. It breaks every sacred law. Lyra turned to face them. Then your laws are already broken, because they protect power, not people. The queen closed her eyes briefly. Enough. For a long, painful moment, no one spoke. Then she turned toward Ethan. You, step forward. Ethan did. His voice was steady, though his body was weak. Your Majesty, you came here as a guest, not a warrior. You interfered with our customs, drew your weapon against our kind, and killed one of my soldiers. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. I did what I had to do to survive. To protect her. The queen studied him carefully. And would you do it again? He didn't hesitate. Every time. The queen exhaled slowly, not in anger, but in something closer to sorrow. You are either the bravest or the most foolish man I have ever met. Ethan gave a small smile. Probably both. A faint murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. Even Lyra's lips curved slightly. But the queen's face remained unreadable. After a long pause, she spoke quietly. You saved my daughter's life twice. For that, I owe you a debt. But you have also brought chaos to Alaris. Ethan nodded. Then punish me, not her. Lyra's eyes widened. No, he glanced at her, a small, reassuring look. Let me do this, Lyra. The queen stared at him for several long seconds, and then finally she said something no one expected. There will be no punishment. The council erupted in protest. Your Majesty. You cannot. She raised a hand, silencing them instantly. Her eyes softened as she looked between Lyra and Ethan. You call her broken, yet she stands stronger than any of you. You call him unworthy, yet he showed more honor than our own kind. Then she turned to Lyra. You've proven that even those who are different can love, fight, and bleed the same. Perhaps it is time our people learn that too. Tears welled in Lyra's eyes. Mother, the queen's voice grew gentler. You have your father's heart, child. Reckless but pure. The queen stepped closer, placing a hand over Lyra's chest, right above the place where metal met skin. You are not broken. You are reborn. Lyra's breath trembled. Ethan bowed his head respectfully, unsure whether to speak. The queen looked at him next. You may stay, Commander Cross, but understand, if you hurt her, not even the stars will hide you from me. Ethan smiled softly. Fair enough, Your Majesty. A rare, faint smile tugged at the queen's lips before she turned away. This council is adjourned. The nobles slowly dispersed, their whispers fading into the distance. When the great doors closed, Lyra finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Ethan reached for her hand, the human warmth meeting cold metal. "So, does this mean we won?" Lyra laughed quietly, tears still glistening in her eyes. "No, Ethan, it means we begin." Outside, the twin suns of Alaris broke through the clouds, casting golden light through the palace windows. For the first time in years, the world didn't seem so dark. Lyra turned to the balcony, looking at the endless sky, her hand still in Ethan's. "They'll never stop judging us," she said softly. Ethan smiled, his voice warm and steady. "Then we'll give them something worth talking about." She looked up at him, her heart full. For once, the title Broken Princess no longer hurt. She wasn't broken anymore. She was whole, and she had chosen her own destiny. And as the suns rose over Alaris, the legend began, of the human who loved the alien princess, and the princess who taught an entire world what it truly meant to be alive.